Hello everyone, my name is Marisa Esquer. Today I will be presenting my program evaluation proposal on the Structured English Immersion Dual Language Program. To start out, I wanted to do a presentation overview of what we will be covering today. First, we will start out with a description of the dual language program, go over the goals and objectives of the program. Then we'll take a look at a logic model. Then we'll move on to the evaluation framework that I propose for the dual language program. And finally, we'll take a look at outcomes and data collection methods. Description. Arizona's dual language program is a 50-50 instructional program. 50-50 means that 50% of the instruction will happen in English and 50% of the instruction will happen in a partner language, also known as a native language, for the students. In Arizona's case, that is most commonly Spanish, but that could also be another language. The dual language program for ELL students is in place for students to become English proficient within 1 year. As I mentioned earlier, the students will use English and a partner language for equal time during instruction. So some ways that this might happen are half days, alternate days, or alternate weeks. The way that the time is divided is up to the school or the EL coordinator who is implementing the dual language program. Some instructional strategies that you may see in a 50-50 dual language program include immersion techniques. That means that English instruction is happening without any support from the student's native language, and that time is dedicated solely to English instruction. Another technique that you may see in a 50-50 dual language program is translanguaging. Translanguaging allows students to use their native language skills to support their English language development. Students are allowed to interchangeably use English and their native language in order to help with their understanding and communication. Now I will move on to the goals and objectives of the dual language program. To start out, I did want to review our overarching study question. Do dual language programs in Arizona improve English language learner students' academic achievement based on standard scores set by the Arizona English Language Learner Assessment? From here on out, I will refer to English language learners as ELL, and I will refer to the Arizona English Language Learner Assessment as the AZELA. The program goal is to achieve English proficiency for ELL students based on the state-mandated program goal of becoming English proficient within 1 year. English proficiency in Arizona is only evaluated based on the AZELA assessment, so that is the way that we will be evaluating the students' proficiency for this program evaluation proposal as well. Objectives of the program are to support SEI instruction so that students can be successful in their English learning abilities. In addition, another objective that we want to look at is to advocate for multilingual learners' academic growth and linguistic growth. This should be done through research-backed programs such as a dual language program. Now we'll take a look at the logic model. As you can see on the left-hand column, I have the inputs laid out here. Inputs of the dual language program include teachers, dual language teaching methods, funding, and ELL students. The outputs are broken down into two separate categories, activities and participants. Activities include teacher preparation, dual language program instruction. This includes translanguaging and immersion techniques, which I briefly mentioned in the program description, and funding orientations. The participants of the program include teachers, admin, the ELL students, and on a bit of a higher level, we might have superintendents, charter representatives, EL coordinators, and other administrators based on which kind of public school we're looking at. The outcomes will be divided into short-term, mid-term, and long-term outcomes. We'll also be reviewing these in a bit more detail later on in this presentation. But if you take a look here, you can see that there are short-term outcomes for each of our participants within the program. The short-term and mid-term outcomes are that teachers can effectively learn the skills needed to teach dual language classes, and that they're able to effectively apply those teaching strategies to their own classrooms. For students, the short and midterm outcomes will look like students improving their confidence in their English language skills and showing positive growth on their AZELA assessments. As far as funding, we want to make sure that schools are getting the funding that they need in order to implement the dual language programs and sustain them. Finally, first quarter AZELA assessments should show positive progress as long as the activities and participants are being utilized correctly. Long-term outcomes of the dual language program are that ELL students are able to reach proficiency in English within that year goal that the dual language program has through the state of Arizona, and that would be based on their AZELA scores. When I mention AZELA test scores throughout this presentation, it's important to keep in mind that AZELA test scores are based on cut scores. So as an example, if you score a 10 on the AZELA assessment, that might mean that you're minimally proficient. If you score a 50, that might be approaching proficiency. If you score a 70, that would be proficient, and 100 would be highly proficient, just as an example. These are not real test scores. So students must fall within those cut scores in order to be labeled proficient. Now we'll move on to evaluation framework. The evaluation framework that I have chosen for the dual language program evaluation is value-added design adjusted for additional covariates. I chose this design or evaluation framework because it includes program pre-measures and post-measures. This was really important with the alignment to our dual language program because the AZELA assessment is the only way that students can be effectively evaluated on English proficiency, which means these cut scores must be included in the framework pre-test and post-test. In addition to the AZELA scores, the value-added design adjusted for additional covariates also includes additional covariates or variables that allow us to address some of the inaccuracies in the evaluation. Variables that we would include in this evaluation would be students' socioeconomic backgrounds, their pre-test scores, and students' race. Now we will review the outcomes and data collection methods. Short-term outcomes are improved AZELA scores on quarterly assessments. Intermediate outcomes are ELL students in the dual language program are starting to outperform students in alternative SEI programs. Long-term outcomes are that ELL students are reaching their goal of becoming English proficient in 1 year. As I mentioned, data collection methods will be quantitative because they are those student test scores, so we will not be conducting any sort of qualitative evaluation for this framework. The student scores will be collected through agency records, which we will get through the school or the district. We will be collecting the student scores of the students in the dual language program as well as students in alternative SEI instructional programs as a comparison group for our evaluation. Now for a summary of everything we've covered so far. First, we will collect sample data of ELL students enrolled in alternative SEI programs to use as our comparison group. We'll collect these using agency records, and we will include all of the added variables that I previously mentioned, such as pre-test scores, race, free and reduced lunch status, which will represent the socioeconomic background of the students. And we will also do this for our students in our dual language program. Then we will conduct formative evaluations, which will look like collecting quarterly AZELA scores for students in our comparison group and in our dual language program. Then we will review the final end of the year performance of our comparison group and our students in the dual language program using their AZELA scores. We will perform a regression analysis in order to evaluate the effectiveness of the dual language program. Finally, we will present these findings in order for Arizona schools to advocate for the implementation of more dual language programs. This is under the assumption that the dual language program was successful, but we would present the findings either way. Here are my references that I used to create today's presentation. Thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to your feedback. Thank you.